Welcome everyone. My name is Jesse Fulton. I am the Director of Producer Education with NCBA here in Centennial, Colorado. I'm pleased to welcome you tonight for the last of our 3 webinars in our series focused on cattle reproduction. We are proud to be partnering on this series with the Repro Task Force team, beef cattle reproduction experts from universities across the country. As a participant, I want to remind you that your line will be muted, but feel free to type in questions in the question box on your screen. And at the end of the presentations, the team will answer as many questions as time allows. If you have trouble with your technology, or if you are joining us only for the audio, the webinar is being recorded and will be available for your viewing within 24 hours at ncba.org. The webinar tonight focuses on technologies used to detect cattle pregnancy. Tonight's speakers are Dr. Ronaldo Cook and Dr. Kai Poehler with Texas A&M University. You can view their bios at ncba.org. With that, Dr. Poehler, I will now hand it off to you to kick off the webinar.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Okay, howdy everyone. It's great to be on tonight and visiting with everyone about pregnancy determination in cattle, and I want to thank NCBA for the opportunity to share a little bit about pregnancy determination. The goal tonight is I'm going to talk really about sort of technology associated with pregnancy determination, and then Dr. Ronaldo Cook's going to talk about really what to do after we have determined that the animal is indeed pregnant. So thinking about pregnancy determination in cattle, the first thing I want to focus on is really what are the pivotal periods of pregnancy loss. And the reason that I want to start off this way is because as we think about putting together successful pregnancy diagnosis, pregnancy determination strategies, I think we need to think about when are the times that pregnancy loss is potentially the highest in beef cattle, and try to work around those as we develop strategies utilizing the currently available technologies. So the first thing is, as we go into a group of beef animals, turn on my highlight or my laser here, and we think about beef cattle fertility, fertilization rate is not really a problem in beef cattle. And so in this specific set of data, if we go into a group of animals, and this is a lot of summarized data from across the literature, breed animals based on a standing estrus, go in and collect those reproductive tracts about day 7, post-AI or post-insemination. About 95% of the time, fertilization rate has occurred. So really, unlike what we see in the dairy cow, fertilization rate and fertilization of the actual sperm getting to the oocyte isn't necessarily an issue. Now, as we go out from day 7 to day 28 of gestation in cattle, and this is really the first time with all the technology that we have available currently on the market today that we can accurately determine pregnancy status in beef cattle, there's about a 25% loss. We go from 95% pregnant down to about 70% pregnant, and this encompasses about a 25% loss that we characterize as early embryonic loss. There's a number of factors that are associated with this, such as failure of maternal recognition of pregnancy, asynchrony between the uterus and the embryo, etc., and just a lot of different things that have been shown to be associated with this early embryonic loss. The good news for us is that a lot of times this loss is, we don't really ever see it, because these cows cycle back around and basically get rebred back in the same breeding season. Now, as we go from day 28 of gestation out to the next pivotal period of pregnancy loss down to day 60, there's another 8% loss that's characterized as late embryonic, sometimes early fetal embryonic loss. And this is really the loss after you have a detection of a heartbeat and this cow comes open. So I always think of this loss as, this is sort of those cows that we detect that are pregnant in the breeding season. We turn them out to grass, we turn them out, we believe that they're pregnant, but at the end of the calving season, they end up never producing a calf for us. And so a lot of these are the factors of late embryonic loss. Then as we go from day 60 to calving, there's a very small percentage of pregnancy loss in beef cattle, and it's really associated with, this number can be driven quite high by some disease-based insult in the herd, but most of the time we think of this as being quite low. So two major periods, early embryonic loss and late embryonic loss, and really going to structure the pregnancy diagnosis strategies that I'm going to talk about today around these two areas. Now, why does it matter? Why do we care about pregnancy loss? I just have a very simple scenario set up here discussing some of the very simple math behind pregnancy diagnosis when looking at pregnancy loss. So here we have 4 different scenarios. We have cows that are bred to timed artificial insemination, and they conceive and they stay pregnant to that. So they're going to calve on day 0 or the first day of the calving season when those calves are born. Then we have cows that were bred to time AI, but they lost an embryo in that first 28 days. However, they got bred back to the bull in a cleanup situation because they cycled back around in a normal situation, got bred back. So their calves are at least 21 days younger than these calves from the time AI. Then we have the late embryonic loss group. These cows lose a pregnancy after day 28 of gestation, so we confirm them pregnant at some point. They lose their pregnancy, but they get rebred back toward the end of the breeding season. And in a 60-day breeding season, I'm estimating that their calves are at least 60 days behind these normal time AI calves. And then we have the situation of the cows never conceiving, are undergoing pregnancy loss, and never getting rebred back. Now, if we just look at some simple estimates across here, and we assume that you take age times 2 pounds per day that these calves are gaining, you can see as you go from the time AI calves that are born the first day of the calving season to the early embryonic loss, there's about a 42-pound difference. Get to the late embryonic loss, 120-pound difference, and then obviously the ones that never calve, they never wean a calf, so there's no pounds whatsoever, so minus 550. Then if you plug in your calf value, whatever that value is for your area and what your perceived value of your calves are, you can go through here and simply estimate the amount of money that you're losing simply on a pounds weaned day of age in these calves as we look at the early embryonic loss, late embryonic loss, and never calved. So there's 2 things that really stick out. One, if a cow never produces a calf and stays in the breeding season and goes all the way through the calving season, she's going to be quite expensive because we leave a lot on the table. However, in this early embryonic loss and late embryonic loss scenario, we're losing money in both situations. However, the late embryonic loss, the cows that we confirm pregnant and they go on to lose a pregnancy in that breeding season but still conceive and have a calf, they still lose a fair amount of money, or we leave a lot of money on the table there from them. So 2 things to really think about. And the thing that I want to point out that probably everyone knows very well is that all these animals in each of these scenarios right here cost the same to maintain. So it's not like that we can feed these animals with late embryonic loss at a cheaper rate than we can feed the early or the bred time AIs or get the never calves out. It's just not that simple. So we need to think about developing pregnancy diagnosis strategies using the technology that I'm going to talk about today in order to help us minimize this loss to maximize our profitabilities. So knowing the pregnancy status of your herd obviously has a lot of benefit to it and has a lot of key data for making management decisions, such as nutritional based plans to help us increase the plan of nutrition in our cows, specifically in times of drought where we might be struggling nutritionally, how to deal with cows, how to deal with cow numbers. Obviously in a drought situation, knowing pregnancy status and culling our open cows or non-pregnant animals make it the easiest. That falls right in line with marketing plans. As we think about marketing animals, knowing the pregnancy status of them is very important. The thing that I think is very critical is that it helps us evaluate the reproductive efficiency of our herds. I'm going to show you the USDA data here in the next slide, but knowing and being able to evaluate the reproductive efficiency of our herds from a bull semen quality point of view, from the success of all the technologies that have been covered in this webinar, this reproductive series, from ester synchronization, AI, time AI, sex semen, embryo transfer, all those things it's really critical to have sort of those baseline measures to understand where our reproductive efficiency actually is. And I think the other thing that's important to know, we've seen a lot of different scenarios this year, specifically in the area that we're in Texas, with trying to understand why reproductive efficiency might be a little bit lower, and knowing the times at which pregnancy loss is occurring and if pregnancy loss is occurring in a herd versus never knowing whether the animal is pregnant or not is really critical. And I think this is going to help us in identifying the efficiency or inefficiency of the specific situation that we might be in. So I point all these out, and I think that I could convince anyone that all of these are very important in regards to knowing the pregnancy status of the herd and the data that it provides for helping us. But when we look at the reality behind it, and we look at the number of, or the percentage of pregnancy diagnosis done in beef herds in the U.S., this is looking at pregnancy or palpation for pregnancy and ultrasound. If we summarize this across all, it's only about 20% of all operations that are utilizing pregnancy diagnosis in their herds. And I have this broken down by herd size, and we can obviously see that as you go from a smaller herd size of 1 to 49 up to 200 or more, you increase the percentage at which producers are utilizing or operations are utilizing, but still these numbers are quite low for the benefit and the what we're able to gain from the results that we get from this. So just keep that in mind, and all the technology that I'm going to point out today, my main take-home message is going to be there's a lot of different technologies that are on the market and available for pregnancy determination and diagnosis. And I don't want to convince you to use one versus another. My main point is just to use a proven method of pregnancy diagnosis in the correct times and in the correct strategies. So what is the ideal pregnancy test? And this is a view from where I sit on what I think the ideal pregnancy test is. The key features are it has to have high sensitivity and high specificity. Obviously, we have to be able to identify pregnant animals, and we have to be able to correctly identify non-pregnant animals. That's really the basis for it. I think it needs to be simple. We would obviously all love if it was inexpensive or cheaper than probably what we're currently getting it for as we move forward. And the other thing, and this really goes into where I see sort of the future of pregnancy diagnosis and determination, is it would be nice to be able to do a pregnancy diagnosis at day 28 and determine whether that cow is going to have a successful pregnancy going forward and get through that late embryonic stage, instead of just having a snapshot in time and telling us whether she's pregnant. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of technology associated with this. So the evolution of pregnancy detection, has come a long way. Probably the oldest, most reliable, and most used method of pregnancy diagnosis that's still on the market today is waiting for the cow to calve. So I've never seen a cow that's had a calf that calved that was not pregnant, but highly inefficient. We also have other visual and manual examinations, such as the cow bagging up or starting to see mammary development. We get into the 35 to 40 days, you have manual palpation of the uterus, rectal palpation, I'm going to talk about this. The 20 to 30 days, ultrasound, blood-based, milk-based test. And then really before the 20 days of gestation, there's been a number of different technologies that have been evaluated. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about those today, but a lot of them have proven to not be as accurate and really fit those keys to what a successful and accurate pregnancy diagnosis method is, like I covered in the slide before. So methods of pregnancy evaluation that are currently on the market. We have rectal palpation, we have ultrasound, and we have chemical-based pregnancy detection. And the thing that I want to point out, again, is that not any of these are better than the others. And there's a lot of management decisions that go into determining which is best for your individual operation. And that's the thing that I really want to point out, is choosing a method of pregnancy determination and diagnosis is really critical, that you fit something that, or pick something that works well for you, and don't do it just because your neighbor's doing it. Really think about it and think about the limitations or the strategies that you want to put into place. Just a couple of things that I want to point out is sometimes we might be limited by facilities. Here's an example of where you have to sort of crawl over the chute or the panels each time to do a pregnancy determination. But again, we have to think about the facilities that we have, the location of the cows might be in. So if we're moving cows to more of a range-based pasture, do we have the facilities to properly do pregnancy diagnosis there? The other thing is it might be limited by the temperament of the animals. And Dr. Cook is going to talk about some of the things associated with once the cow is pregnant, but thinking about, low stress animal handling and those type of things. So all these things have to be thought about as we're putting together our plan. First, I want to talk about rectal palpation of the uterus. So this is, an old method that's been around for a long time, still used widely across the industry, probably is the most utilized method. But we're really going in and thinking about feel. Okay, so we're feeling for the presence of fluid along with the pregnancy, and you can see this bovine reproductive tract laying here. You can see this horn is definitely pregnant. You can see the fluid in the horn. You can see the individual hand here picking up the horn. You're going in, trying to feel for fluid, feel for the fetus, feel for placentomes, membrane slip, anything that you might be able to detect that's not detectable in a sort of non-pregnant uterus. This is what we're sort of looking at here. We have these button-like structures that are called placentomes. You should be able to feel those. You can feel the fluid associated with the pregnancy and the actual fetus itself. And that can be done as early as day 35, and accuracy is obviously going to increase as the size of the embryo and the calf grow. The next is ultrasound for pregnancy diagnosis. This is an earlier diagnosis of open cows. It allows us to get into those animals a little bit earlier, as early as 27 to 28 days of gestation. Most studies show near 100% accuracy when we go in, we ultrasound the cow, we determine that she's indeed pregnant, and then we harvest the reproductive tract. All right, that's not to say that if we ultrasound the cow today, that she's going to maintain that pregnancy. That's not what that accuracy means. It's on that given day. But it really provides us a witness. It allows us to be able to see this developing embryo, developing fetus. We can see a cross-section of this embryo or fetus right here about day 45 of gestation. You can see all this black in here is fluid. Here's the reproductive tract around there. So you can actually witness and see. And I think the thing that I like to think about is when I see this image, I feel more confident. It makes me feel good inside that I can actually see it versus on rectal palpation, we're feeling it. But both very accurate methods. So what are some of the sort of the differences between them? Well, again, on one side, we're basically feeling for all the things on the other side that we're seeing with the ultrasound. The one thing that I want to point out that with ultrasound is a major advantage over rectal palpation is it allows us to really get a very accurate age of the developing calf as well as sex of the actual calf at specific stages of gestation. And most of this is done before about day 85, day 90 of gestation, before that calf and that pregnancy have sort of gone over the pelvic floor and started to grow. So, but really accurate at being able to do that in the right circumstances. And so again, one situation you're feeling, the other you're seeing. The other thing that I want to point out on the seeing part with ultrasound, we can also see a viable embryonic or fetal heartbeat, which is also nice to see in something that we can't feel with our individual hand. Just want to talk about a few technologies in regard to ultrasound that you might have heard of, and something that I think is going to be promising for us as we move forward is the idea that we can use blood flow technology or Doppler-based ultrasound to determine blood perfusion through the developing corpus luteum, which is generated after you have an ovulation, and determine whether the cow is pregnant or open based on this. And so this is an early-based pregnancy diagnosis between day 18 and day 20. And the idea here is that if you have an increase in sort of vascular-based tissue in blood flow through the CL, that's a good sign and positively associated with pregnancy. And all I want to point out is that, there's a lot happening in this area, specifically in South America, in Brazil, looking at this type of technology, and there's been a lot of success shown in it. And I think there's going to be refinement in the area and sort of have to be cost-benefit analysis done in regards to sort of the risk versus reward of doing this type of diagnosis, but really promising and something that I think we're going to continue to hear about. The other thing that I want to point out is that there's other ultrasound technologies such as 3D or 4D based ultrasound where you can generate images like this. However, this is not really a commercially viable method just because of the technology that it takes, but really the difficulty in getting these base scans. I just point this out. I think this is a really nice image and unique image of seeing, what about a day 60 fetus looks like developing in the uterus. And obviously, it would be really easy to sex this fetus. And so, again, not really viable, but just another technology from an ultrasound point of view. So that really covers palpation, rectal palpation, and ultrasound, and really what technologies are available. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about chemical-based methods and chemical pregnancy tests that are available for producers. So as I go across here, again, there's a lot of different technologies that have been tried or been thought about or maybe have been on the market or are currently on the market. And today I'm really going to focus on one, and that's PAG, pregnancy-associated glycoproteins. I'm not going to spend time talking about any of these other ones and really want to focus in on pregnancy-associated glycoproteins. So what are PAGs? PAGs are produced they're produced by the developing conceptus and the placenta. You find them in cows that are pregnant or early postpartum cows, and that's why I show this image here. So in this situation, this cow is, I guess she's still considered pregnant, but she's also postpartum, so she's sort of right in between. So you'll find pregnancy-associated glycoproteins in circulation, again, in cows that are pregnant or early postpartum. They're produced by these button-like structures called placentomes, which is what we were feeling or seeing earlier with the ultrasound. And they're produced by a unique cell type within the placentomes called binucleated trophoblast cells, these green cells here. And what happens is these cells start to appear about day 20 of gestation and start to produce this protein. And I'm going to show you some of the work that we've done trying to determine how early you can detect it in circulation and when you can use it as a pregnancy diagnosis method. But nevertheless, it allows us to take a blood sample from the animal, from the tail, from the jugular vein. Our dairy friends utilize it in milk, but in this situation, I'm going to talk about blood. So how does the PAG test work? Really, all currently available PAG tests work through an ELISA or a reaction on a 96 well plate. And so I have two individual wells here I'm going to show you as we go through. So we add the original sample. We go through a series of additions and washes. You can see in this case right here, this blue particle, this diamond shape is PAG. That's the PAG protein, so it binds to this antibody. And as we go through a series of washes and steps and additions, you eventually get to a point where you have a positive and a negative diagnosis. All right, so that's really how all the technology currently works. I'm going to show you some real life examples here. There's three current companies that offer different PAG-based tests. That's IDEX, Bioprin, and DG29 is marketed by Genex and CRI. This is what one of the plates would look like. So you can see you have a negative up here on the top, clear, clear. Here you have a positive with yellow, positive, etc., and you can go through. Now, these are all tests that you currently have to send the samples into a lab, and they will provide sample or results back to you within 1 to 3 business days. The only currently available on-farm pseudo sort of shoot side type test that's available is the rapid read visual test, which is marketed by IDEX. And this test takes 21 minutes, and I just show a picture of it here. It's basically the exact same thing, but it's done on farm or in an office or wherever it might be, or in a vet clinic. And it's through a series of additions and washes. It takes 21 minutes to read, and you get to a situation where you diagnose pregnant or non-pregnant. And you can see here, again, this is what the plate would look like. I'm going to just go through and read this first line. Non-pregnant, pregnant, non-pregnant, pregnant, pregnant, non-pregnant, non-pregnant, pregnant. So that's the idea behind it. Now, what do the blood concentrations over time look like? And the first thing I want to talk about is we're going to start with calving. So when the cow first calves, blood concentrations of PAGs are quite high, and that's because as the developing calf grows and as the placenta gets larger, the calf produces more, or the placenta produces more PAG. Over time, this decreases as we get through days of postpartum, to eventually it gets down to the baseline level about 60 to 70 days, depending on the test, depending on the PAG that you're detecting. So then we AI the cows, and we look at a situation where we AI here at 65 days postpartum, we test 30 days later, so 95 days postpartum. The cows that have PAG are positive and pregnant. The cows that don't have PAG are open. And then we have this situation of animals here that have an increase, but they end up losing that pregnancy and consider those embryonic loss. So I'm going to talk about these cows here in a little bit in regards to the future of the technology. PAGs during gestation, to get to that calving window, which we started here and then decreased. As we go through the months of gestation, PAG levels increase. We can start detecting them about day 24 of gestation, but they're not accurate there for a pregnancy diagnosis. I'm going to show you why. And they increase all the way to the point of calving and then decrease like I showed you on the slide before. And this is really correlated with placental and fetal growth. So what's the accuracy of these? There's been a lot of different studies. I'm showing you real-time ultrasonography data where we went in and we measured the actual heartbeats of these animals and visualized the heartbeats. 720 beef cows, 54% pregnancy rate, 386 pregnancies. We compared that to PAG and we were 97% accurate. And if you look at the literature, it's all in between the 90 to 99% accuracy in regards to pregnancy determination. And I'm going to show you potentially why it's not 100% accurate here in a few slides. How early can we successfully diagnose pregnancy with PAGs? Like I said, we can detect them as early as day 24 of gestation. However, they're not very accurate as a marker of pregnancy diagnosis as day 24. So I really encourage you to use the recommended cutoffs and use the recommended days postpartum, that whatever test you're utilizing out of the 3 companies recommends, and follow their recommendations and instructions. Because what we see is we see a lot of animals at day 24 of gestation that have PAG in circulation. So this is this 11% here, have PAG in circulation at day 24, but don't go on to have a pregnancy at day 28 or 31 when we do the ultrasounds. And so it's really important, I really stress this, to make sure that you're following the recommendations for the test very strictly in order to maximize the accuracy and get the biggest benefit that you can. So the future of pregnancy diagnosis, and thinking about where we're headed and what the possibilities are, and I sort of have this drone out here. Maybe I should have a bull sitting in the pasture with a notepad taking notes on who's pregnant and who's not. But really the future pregnancy diagnosis, I think, is based around this idea of trying to identify cows that are going to undergo embryonic mortality, whether that's early or late. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the late embryonic mortality, again, that 8% that I showed you the math on earlier, and thinking about the potential of trying to capture that 8% of animals, that we can get them out of the herd so that they don't end up at the end of the calving season not producing a viable calf for us, and really spending that entire breeding season, entire calving season and winter with us and not having anything productive. So I want to show you 2 individual animals here. These are 2 individual animals that we ultrasounded every 2 days, and we're visualizing their heartbeats starting on about day 27 of gestation. Here's the same image that I showed you earlier from an early gestation pregnancy. The arrow in both of these cows represents the last time that I visualized a heartbeat. And what we see, I have PAG here in this dark black line, which we've been talking about. And then I have the hormone progesterone, which is produced by the corpus luteum and is important for pregnancy. And what we see is that in this individual cow here, PAG levels are coming down before the heartbeat has even stopped, which is most likely not a good sign, right? And in this individual cow, you can see her PAG levels never really increased to a normal level before she has a loss of heartbeat. So we thought about, well, I wonder if there's something in regards to PAG and embryonic mortality or pregnancy loss. So we've done a number of studies in this area looking at this, and this is just a set of data where we look at cows that are pregnant on day 30. Okay, so we ultrasound them, they're pregnant on day 30, and there's about 3,000 to 5,000 cows in this graph, pregnant on day 30, and do they go on to have a successful pregnancy? So did they maintain the pregnancy? Or were they pregnant on day 30, but did they lose that pregnancy in the next 30 to 60 days? And so in these cows that maintain their pregnancy at day 30, they have significantly higher PAGs, okay, pregnancy-associated glycoproteins, in circulation compared to these cows that are going to lose their pregnancy, even though on day 30, I'm visualizing with an ultrasound that all these pregnancies are alive, they all look the same, they all have an embryonic or fetal heartbeat. And what we see is that for every 1 nanogram per mil increase you get in PAG, you get about an 11% increase in the odds to have a successful pregnancy. And that's probably visualized best right here. As we have an increase in early gestation PAGs, you get an increase in the probability of pregnancy maintenance from about 30% up to about 100%. So again, really suggesting that this is a strong indicator whether you're going to have a successful pregnancy or not. And so what does this mean? Well, as we think about the future, being able to identify with these tests the cows that are going to have successful or not successful pregnancies would be really important for us from a managerial point of view in helping us decrease that reproductive efficiency that we see in our operations. Now I'll end with this, the conclusions. Rectal palpation, ultrasound, and PAGs are all effective methods of pregnancy diagnosis, and when used in the right situations with skilled individuals, are equally accurate to each other. Embryonic mortality between day 17 and 31 provide major challenges for earlier pregnancy diagnosis. Okay, so this is a major issue that really didn't have a lot of time to expand on, but as we think about decreasing the day at which we do pregnancy diagnosis, for every day you decrease it, if you go from 28 to 25, you're going to have more pregnancy loss because you're picking up an actual 4 to 5 days there. So these are all things that we have to think about, sort of pluses and minuses and benefits of newer technology. And the main thing that I want you to take away from this is that no matter what, use a proven method of pregnancy diagnosis. These are the 3 proven methods that I've showed you here. Use a proven method. Use something that works well for you, that fits your operation, that fits your management strategies, and most of all, that you're comfortable with in order to maximize your success. So with that, I'll end there, and we're going to take questions at the end. So at this time, I will turn it back over to Jesse and Reinaldo. I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, I guess we're ready to go. Well, thank you very much for the chance to speak to you guys again. I wonder if some of you guys had a chance to come to New Orleans earlier this year to attend the meeting. And if not, it's a pleasure to share some of these results with you all. My name is Ronaldo Cook. I'm with Texas A&M University. And today we're going to talk about management of cows after we know they're pregnant, and what can we do in terms of management and nutrition to ensure that the offspring is going to be as efficient as possible after it is born. So first of all, during pregnancy, the fetus depends completely on the cow for nutrient supply to support its growth and all metabolic processes. And that includes energy, protein, minerals, and even fatty acids. Consequently, the management or the nutritional management of cows during gestation has a direct impact on calf development in utero and also calf production after it's born. And this effect we usually call as fetal programming. How we can program the calves, when they're still being gestating, to be as efficient as possible through cow management during a pregnancy. Overall, there is a lot of research done in this area, and we kind of understand the importance of maintaining cows in adequate nutritional status throughout the gestation to make sure that the development of that pregnancy is adequate and that calf is going to be productive after it's born. Now, a lot of this research started back in the day with human medicine, and I'm not going to go into the details about those earlier studies. But nowadays, we know that prenatal nutrition for women is essential for health of the babies and also of the offspring throughout their life, even as adults. Now, the Institute of Medicine from the National Academies suggests that women with adequate weight pre-pregnancy, so women with normal weight prior to pregnancy, they should gain about 30 to 35 pounds during gestation, okay, 30 to 35 pounds, which means about 3 pounds on average per month of gestation. However, they should be more concerned during the second and third trimesters of gestation and should be gaining about 4 pounds a month during these periods, okay? So about 30 to 35 total during gestation, but focusing on the last 2 trimesters, gaining about 4 pounds a month. And why is that? Usually, this amount of gain on a monthly basis ensure that there's enough nutrients reaching the fetus. Consequently, there's still a little bit more that is being left over for the mom, so she can gain some reserves. Consequently, there's plenty of nutrients being delivered to that growing calf or growing human. In addition to maintaining females or pregnant females on a good plan of nutrition, on a positive plan of nutrition, there's also the possibilities of supplementing specific nutrients during gestation. And usually, we're not talking about supplementing nutrients to females that are, or women that are deficient. This is actually beyond the requirements because there's evidences that if we provide specific nutrients during gestation, you're going to have some positive effects on the offspring. And 2 of the most common supplements that are offered to or recommended for pregnant women, first one is trace minerals from organic sources, mainly zinc and copper, as you can see here in the bottom as a prenatal mineral and vitamin complex. And also omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids that are essential fatty acids that our bodies and also the bovine body cannot synthesize, so it has to be provided on the diet. And here's an example of a supplement to a gestating woman, including omega-6 and omega-3. Okay, so basically, when doctors are have their patients during pregnancy, the recommendations, in general, is to gain about 30 to 35 pounds. So they're always gaining weight during gestation with special care to the last 2 trimesters of gestation. In addition to that, they recommend patients, even though they're not deficient on those nutrients, to take additional sources of trace minerals from specifically from organic sources. And again, we're talking about zinc and copper, and also those omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. So we decided to take the same approach and focus on those 2 areas that are fairly common on the human medicine and see how that apply to cattle. To look into the whole body weight gain during gestation and what's the importance of maintaining cows on good nutritional status compared to cows on poor nutritional status, we had a study where we had cows that had a body condition score of 4. And if you guys are not very comfortable with the whole body condition score system, basically 1 goes from 1 to 9, and basically 1 is a very thin cow and 9 is a very obese cow. On average, we're looking for 5s, 5.5. So here, we're not looking into very drastic examples of poor nutrition. Here we have a cow that's 4, okay, on the thin side. Then we have a cow that's 6, she's on the good side. So we have cows that were 4 or 6 throughout gestation. But again, they were static. They were always 4 or always 6 during gestation. Remember, the recommendation for women is to gain weight. Here, the cow that's body condition score, she's really not gaining a whole lot of weight, but she's maintaining a good nutritional status throughout the whole gestation period. The same thing for the 4. She's not gaining any reserves, but she's maintaining a less than adequate nutritional status throughout gestation. Okay, so we have those 2 groups of cows, and then we have cows that started gestation as 4, and then they gain reserves to reach a body condition score of 6, either during the first trimester, the second trimester, or the third trimester. Goes back to the human side, as here we have cows that are adding nutritional reserves to their bodies, but at different times of gestation. So in the study, not only we're trying to understand when is the best time for cows to gain weight in terms of how beneficial that is to the offspring, but also we have to take into consideration that to make cows gain 1 body condition score, which means add nutritional reserves to their body, it's really hard to do that during the first trimester because the cows are still lactating. So, you know, roughly to gain 1 body condition score, we need to provide an extra 4 megacalories of energy per day per cow. So, which means a lot of energy supplementation. Now, if we decide to do that during the second trimester, which is usually after weaning, so those cows are not lactating anymore, the requirements to gain 1 body condition score drops down significantly. If we move to the third trimester, then the end of pregnancy, because of the fetal growth that's accelerating here, then it goes up again. So in terms of efficiency of supplementation, the most efficient time to make cows gain body condition score, as you can see, is in the second trimester because she's not lactating, and fetal growth is not as substantial as it is compared to the last trimester of gestation. With that in mind, I'm going to skip to the results now. And here we have the 5 treatments that, or the 5 groups that we talked about. So again, we have the cows that were always 4 during gestation, so static. The amount of nutrient reserves in their body didn't change. She was always 4 during gestation. And the same thing for the body condition score 6. She was always 6 during gestation, meaning what? There was no fluctuation, addition, or loss of body condition score, which means body reserves or energy reserves during gestation. However, she was in good shape. This cow, she wasn't in good shape. And then we had cows that gained from 4 to 6 during the first trimester and then maintained 6 until calving. We had the same rationale for cows, but that happened on the second trimester. So she was 4 on the first, she gained to 6 on the second, and then she maintained 6 all the way through calving. And then a third group where cows were 4, body conditions 4 during the first and second trimesters, and then gained energy reserves to reach 6 during the third trimester. Again, remember, the second trimester is usually the most efficient time to provide supplements because the cow's requirements are at their lowest. Checking out the results in terms of calf birth body weight didn't change a whole lot between treatments. We had some numerical differences, but it's usually part of a variation that we see on the field and also research trials. Cow milk yield was also about the same, and the milk production we estimated by weigh-suckle weight technique, which might have kind of exaggerated their milk production. But anyways, the important point is that we didn't see a whole lot of changes in the milk production among those cows. It's important to say that after calving, all the cows were maintained in a similar management, nutritional management. Now, moving to the results, to the weaning results, if we look at weaning body weight among groups, we see that the cows that gained, I lost my cursor here, the cows that gained body condition score during gestation, they actually wean heavier calves compared to the cows that were always static 4 or always static 6 during gestation, showing that's important for cows to gain body condition score. If they're gaining body condition score during gestation, it means that they're having enough nutrients for the baby, for that fetus. Consequently, there's enough nutrients for her to start accumulating reserves. Okay, it's the same rationale with humans. Because of that increase in weaning body weight, if we look at the calf value at weaning at the time of the study, we had about an $80 increase if you compare cows from this group here that gained body condition score during the second trimester compared to the other ones. So in general, the study showed that how important it is to make sure that cows are on a gaining behavior in terms of body condition score, so they're accumulating body reserves during gestation, which means that they're providing as much nutrients as possible to their offspring that's being developed in utero. And that results up to 38 pounds of weaning body weight, which means at the time of the study, an $80 increase in calf value. And again, it's most effective during the second and also third, but mostly in the second trimester, because not a whole lot of fetal development on the second, but it's an important part of the gestation period, because that has a tremendous impact on the development or the growth of that fetus. Again, important on the second trimester because of decreased costs of increasing body condition score in non-lactating cows, compare if you had to do that on the first trimester. So in general, the study showed that it's important to make sure that we provide a good nutritional management to our cows during gestation, and to ensure that they're gaining some body condition score during that period, because it's important to ensure that they're on a positive nutritional balance throughout the gestation period, so the most amount of nutrients are being delivered to that growing fetus. Okay, and we do that, I mean, we talk about gaining when feasible. Of course, some of those cows, or the majority of cows, are going to start losing body condition score after calving, and that's normal. But as soon as it is feasible to allow them to start gaining again, you know, the results on the offspring are visible. We can do that in terms of a body condition score gain, looking into macronutrients like energy and protein, and also some micronutrients, nutrition. And to be a little more specific now, we're going to jump into trace minerals, as I gave an example earlier in this presentation about a common supplement that pregnant women take during gestation, which is sources of organic zinc and also copper. Okay, so but the first step is to make sure that cows are in good nutritional status, overall nutritional status during gestation. They're on a positive balance as soon as possible, and then the maximum amount of nutrients are being delivered to that growing fetus. Once we do that, then we can start talking about additional technologies, and that includes specific mineral supplementation during gestation. We don't know a whole lot about the importance of those specific trace minerals in terms of physiology, but we know that they have a significant impact on fetal development and then also on offspring health and performance after birth. And you know, in terms of micro or trace mineral supplementation, we have the opportunity to feed them as inorganic or sulfate sources, or also organic. And in this case, we used amino acid and metal complexes. In terms of supplementing trace minerals to gestating cows, it's usually overlooked by us. And we usually don't pay a whole lot of attention to trace mineral supplementation to gestating cows. It's because we don't know really the importance in terms of fetal development. If you look at the guidelines for nutrition, for instance, the recommendation is to provide 10 ppm of copper to pregnant cows throughout gestation. And it's clear that their requirements change as fetal development becomes more substantial, such as the last trimester. However, the same is not for the human medicine, as most of the women that I know and perhaps across the country that have the opportunity to invest on such technologies are taking prenatal vitamins and minerals. So moving on with this rationale, We had a study that we tested this hypothesis of the importance of trace mineral nutrition to beef cows during gestation. And in this study, we only started those supplementation strategies at the end of the second trimester. Okay, so overall, we had 3 groups of cows. Let me try to change my pointer here because this one is very small. Much better now. So we had 3 groups of cows, cows receiving a control diet without any additional source of copper, cobalt, manganese, and zinc, in addition to what's provided on the basal diet, which was based on alfalfa hay, grass seed straw, cracked corn, and then a macro mineral mix. We had an inorganic group where we provided those minerals on an inorganic source, more specifically, a sulfate source of copper, cobalt, manganese, and zinc. Or the third group was cows receiving those 4 trace elements as an organic source, more specifically in this case, Avela4 from Zimpro. Now, I want you guys to just take a quick look at their at the diet composition or the nutritional profile of the diets, because all the 3 diets had the same energy content, and all the 3 diets had the same crude protein content, a little above their requirements, right? Why? So they could gain body condition score during gestation. That's why you provided a little more to add that extra nutrients for them to accumulate nutrient reserves. But looking into the trace elements or trace minerals that we were interested on, the control diet had about half of the cobalt, half copper, about 75% of the manganese, and about half of zinc than the other 2 diets. We had the same, basically the same amount of those 4 trace minerals. Now, even the control diet was not deficient on those 4 trace minerals if you look into the expected requirements of cows during gestation. In fact, all the 4 trace minerals had the requirements met by the basal diet. So we're not talking about deficiency here. Okay, so results from this study are not related to deficiency because the basal diet was meeting the requirements for those 4 trace minerals, but with potential programming effects of feeding extra or supplemental copper, cobalt, manganese, and zinc on those 2 latter supplemented treatments. After the cows calve, so it's important to understand that those treatments are only applied during gestation. After calving, all the cows received the same nutritional management, which was based on inorganic trace mineral supplementation, only sulfate sources. So we stopped treatments at calving, only focusing on that fetal programming concept. Those calves were weaned at about 7 months of age, 45-day preconditioning, and sent to a commercial feedlot where they remained until slaughter. Now, looking into results here, so on this table we have the liver concentrations of cobalt, copper, manganese, and zinc in the cow, okay, in the cow where the treatments were applied. We have the initial, which is the pre-treatment, just as a baseline, which was similar between all treatment groups. I want you guys to pay attention to the individual minerals in terms of pre-calving. So after, about 3 months after we started treatments. We see that, so when it's green, it's because it's better than control. When it's darker green, it's because it was better than the other supplemented treatment. Cobalt was increased on both supplemented treatments compared to control, but was better on the organic source. Copper, again, the same thing, but a little better on the inorganic source. This is usually because of variation on sampling, and the main message here is that both increased the amount of those trace minerals in the liver of those cows. Manganese didn't change much, but zinc, again, both improved by supplementing a zinc a source to cows in gestation. So overall, we improved cow nutritional, not cow nutritional status, but cow trace mineral status in terms of cobalt, copper, manganese, and zinc by supplementing them either an organic or inorganic source. Now, when we look at the calf liver, and we collected liver samples at birth. As soon as they hit the ground, we got a liver biopsy on the calves, and also we tried to retrieve the placenta of as many cows as we could, to looking to transfer of those minerals from the cow to the fetus during gestation. Interesting to see that in terms of cobalt, both treatments improved or increased cobalt concentration in the placenta and also in the calf liver in the same manner compared to control. Now, copper was also increased in the placenta and the calf liver on both treatments, but was a little better for the organic source. And then zinc, we had an increase in zinc concentrations in the calf liver on both treatments, but again, a little better on the organic source. So overall, in terms of calf and placenta concentrations of trace minerals, organic enhance most likely the transfer of those trace elements from dam to fetus, even though both inorganic and organic sources improve in a similar manner the trace mineral status of the cows. Okay, so perhaps by providing that organic source, we're able to deliver more of those trace minerals, more specifically zinc and copper, to the fetus during gestation. Now, moving into some results, here is the calving and weaning results. Birth body weight was about the same between treatments, but look at the weaning body weights, okay? It's about a huge difference in terms of comparing both supplemented groups with control, but even better on the organic. So because we had heavier calves on the organic and inorganic compared to control, we had better values, but again, greater, okay, for the organic, and the same outcomes we noted after that 45-day preconditioning period. So just to summarize these results here, the organic increased wean calf value by about $70 compared to control, with an extra feeding cost of $3 per cow. So that's throughout the feeding period, okay? We invested $3 on supplementation, we got $70 back because of this increase in weaning body weight. And then the inorganic, again, because it's a little cheaper, we fed, it cost us about $2 a cow during the feeding period, and we had a $32 increase in calf value because of supplementation, all right? Similar outcomes if we use the 45-day preconditioning calf value, because that same, the difference between treatments, either compared to control or in between the supplemented groups, was maintained after the end of the 45-day preconditioning period. Now, we also track those animals all the way to slaughter. I want to point out here that, zinc and copper, they have a very important impact on the immune system development during gestation. And maybe that's the reason to why the animals on the organic group, we only had about 20% incidence of respiratory disease during the receiving period, compared to a fairly significant amount or incidence of disease on the other two treatments. So we were able to knock down a little bit on the BRD side. The exact reasons for that, we don't know, but might be related to the importance of those trace elements on immunity or immune development of the calf during gestation. Again, the same differences, or the differences that we saw at weaning, were maintained throughout the growing period, throughout the finishing period, and then were translated into heavier carcasses. So at the end, we had a 42-pound increase in carcasses from the organic group, 20-pound increase on the inorganic compared to control. So the organic supplementation decreased the incidence of BRD during its critical time, which is the receiving period, and the greater weaning body weight of organic and inorganic was maintained all the way to slaughter, resulting in heavier carcasses, most evident on the organic calves. So this really shows, because we only provide treatments during gestation, the potential fetal programming effects of trace mineral supplementation, more specifically from an organic source, on calf growth and health. Moving on to the second part of this supplementation strategies, which mimics what we traditionally do on the human medicine, is providing the essential fatty acids. And in this case, I'm talking about omega-6 and omega-3. So a similar design, feeding cows at the end of their second trimester. Only two treatments at this time: the control, which had no essential fatty fatty acids, and then the EFA, which means essential fatty acids. A diet based on grass alfalfa hay, some soybean meal as a protein source. Then here we provided a saturated fatty acid source to be isocaloric to the EFA diet, which contained a source of W6 or omega-6 and then omega-3. Okay, so the control diet also had a little bit of fat, but it wasn't essential fat. It was just regular saturated fat to make sure that both diets had the same amount of energy, okay, same amount of energy, isocaloric, and again, above requirements to make sure that those cows are gaining weight. Same amount of protein, okay, however, differing in fatty acid profile. The EFA diet, of course, had more linoleic, which is an essential fatty acid, EPA and DHA, which are omega-3 fatty acids. Now, we don't know the requirements of fatty acids. We don't know the requirements of those specific fatty acids such as linoleic, EPA, DHA. So we don't know if we were above, below of the requirements because we just don't know the requirements, if there are any requirements. But the importance is that we provided diets with different fatty acid profile to test our hypothesis. After the calves are born, again, we stopped treatments. No more fat in the diets of the cows, so the treatments were only applied during gestation. After calving, all cows were managed the same, all calves were managed the same. Wean them at about 7 months of age, preconditioning for 45 days, commercial feedlot to slaughter. This is the blood of the cows, just to show that providing those sources of omega-6 and omega-3 will really increase the concentration of omega-3 and omega-6 in the blood, which then are actually being delivered to the fetus. Not a whole lot of things to discuss here because this was expected. As you provide more omega-6 and omega-3 in the diet, we expect to see that change in the blood of the cow. I'm going to jump into the offspring performance results. Birth body weight about the same, okay? Weaning body weight at this time was also about the same, right? Contrary to what we found in the mineral study, in this study, feeding the essential fatty acids did not change pre-weaning growth rates. However, as soon as those animals went to the feed yard, I want to point out that we had a 0.2 pound increase on feed yard average daily gain, either in the growing lot and the finishing lot, which resulted in heavier carcasses for about 35 pounds on the EFA diet. So the calves born from cows that received the EFA diet were 35 pounds heavier in terms of carcass and have greater marbling compared to the calves born from the control cows. So overall, the offspring from EFA and control cows had similar development, until weaning and preconditioning. However, when we provided a hot feedlot diet, with a significant amount of starch, for instance, to EFA, to cows from the calves from the EFA group, we had most likely an increase in intramuscular fat deposition, because when they were exposed to that high energy diet, most likely their body was more efficient in using those nutrients, resulting in heavier carcasses and also increased marbling at slaughter. Exactly, we don't know the mechanisms behind that, but it's evident that if you provide, it's evident that on the calves born from the EFA, as soon as they hit the feedlot, that's when the potential benefits of feeding essential fatty acids during gestation were demonstrated or translated in terms of a calf performance. So with that, just to summarize this conversation, what to do in terms of cow management during gestation, just always make sure that your cows are in good or adequate body condition score, and when possible, allow them to gain body condition score during gestation, more specifically, at least during the second and third trimesters. We know that after calving and during the first trimester, it's complicated to make cows gain a whole lot of a body condition score, to accumulate body reserves. But as soon as you wean the calves, it's a good time, because they're dry now, but dry and pregnant. It's a good idea to start looking into those cows with more care and allow them to gain body condition score gradually during gestation, so they're calving, about 5.5 body condition score. Once you do that, you can start thinking about strategic prenatal supplementation programs And in this presentation here, I gave the example of organic trace minerals and also essential fatty acids, which, based on those initial studies, are potentially alternatives to optimize offspring productivity and efficiency. With that, that's all I had, and I guess we're going to start answering questions to the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. And I'd like to thank Dr. Poehler and Dr. Cook for that informative overview tonight. This three-part reproduction series has been a great collaboration with the Repro Task Force team, and the NCBA producer education team greatly appreciate it. As we move into our questions and answer session, I want to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded along with all of our past webinars, and they are available for viewing. Just click the Producer Education tab at ncba.org and you'll see the Cattlemen's Webinar Series listed. You can also register for the next webinar, Data Driven Value, scheduled for July 16th at 7 p.m. Central. I also want to put a shout out. I forgot to tell Dr. Poehler and Dr. Cook to cover this, but they will be a part of a Applied Reproductive Strategies in Beef Cattle conference in Knoxville, Tennessee, August the 20th, 21st. Dr. Poehler, if you would like to cover this a little bit before we get into the questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jesse. So every year, the Reproductive Task Force holds a meeting in different parts around the country, and this year that meeting is going to be held at in Knoxville, Tennessee, in conjunction with University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, with Justin Reinhardt. They're at University of Tennessee collaborating with us on this. And it's really a great way to dig into a little bit more about a lot of different things around reproductive efficiency, reproductive management. We have seminar series, we're going to have hands-on education, we'll have a poster, and then a trade show. So for more information, go to the Applied Reproductive Strategies website. Thanks.
Great. Just as a reminder, make sure you chat in your questions down in the chat box on your screen. That way we can get the questions over to these guys and get them answered for you. So the first question I'm getting in, I think this is for you, Dr. Cook. How are EFAs, hold on, it just kicked down to where I can't see it. I'll go ahead and jump to a different one. What about supplementation of a calf when it's born with a liquid supplement at birth? And either one of you can answer this one.
So you're talking about supplementing the calves after birth with this liquid supplement?
Yes.
As like a creep feeding type of deal?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's an alternative to kind of enhance their initial growth. And when we talk about fetal programming, we're talking about a phenomenon called epigenetics, okay? We're kind of giving that animal the opportunity to fully explore its genetic potential, actually a little bit above its genetic potential through this epigenetic concept. Now, the epigenetic window, which is when you can kind of modulate their potential and actually enhance their potential, is usually during gestation and during the first 4 months, 5 months of their life. After that, that epigenetic window seems to be closed. So the calf is what it is. So when you provide some additional nutrients to that calf during the first months of their lives, can also be not only benefiting in terms of their gain and weaning weights, but also making sure they're going to be most likely more efficient down the road in terms of, for instance, feedlot performance and carcass quality. So there are some benefits of creep feeding, either using a liquid supplement or a dry supplement, not only in terms of weaning weights, but that goes back to the economic aspect to make sure it's worth or not. But in addition to that, you also can consider the potential benefits to the epigenetics of that animal, giving them an ability to be more productive than what its original genetics would allow.
Great. Dr. Poehler, I think this one's for you. Are there tests available for producers to test cows on the level of PAGs that they have early at the 30-day mark? That way we can tell if those cows are possibly going to lose that pregnancy?
Yeah, so the commercially available tests that are available today are, that are validated for pregnancy determination as early as day 28. And, those cutoffs are set by the individual companies for the value at which a pregnancy is established. And so that's all handled on an individual test basis. What I can tell you is that the tests are extremely accurate, and all have a little bit different nuances, but they definitely work for detecting pregnancy. And if you look at the accuracies again, they'll be in that sort of mid 90s to high 90 range for the accuracy of having a pregnancy on board. And I think that really the future is sort of refining those cutoffs in order to really dial in and capture some of those cows that are losing their pregnancies. I have no doubt today with the commercial tests that we are seeing individual animals that we're calling open, that if you ultrasounded them, they would indeed be pregnant, but they're going on to lose those pregnancies.
Okay. Dr. Cook, this one's back to your study when you were looking at body condition scoring. What were the age of those cows that were body condition score 4? And for those cows that were body condition score, I know you didn't talk about it tonight, but are there studies out there or data on pregnancy rates of body condition score cows of 4 if you were to breed them when they're body condition score of a 4?
Yes, definitely. The age, all those cows in that study, all those groups they're balanced by age, so they're about on average 4 to 5 years old. All multiparous cows, but all groups had similar age, so we don't have that age confounding effect. And of course, we didn't measure that because it wasn't part of the study design. But we know that when those cows calve at body condition score, their chance to become pregnant as early as possible during the next breeding season really go down compared to cows that calve in good body condition scores, such as 5.5. Okay, so you can expect a huge, and I can't tell you the exact numbers because it varies a lot, but you can expect a fairly substantial decrease in pregnancy rates of those body condition score calves at calving during the next breeding season compared to the body condition scores 5, 5.5, and 6. So not only have the huge negative impacts on calf development, but also you're really impairing the ability of that cow to rebreed as soon as possible during the next breeding season.
Okay, so the correlation, how is the correlation of cow age and body condition score affect your pregnancy rates?
The correlation between cow and body condition score. Okay, usually we see, we have a challenge of body condition score on first calf and also second calf heifers. Body condition score, we have to be a little more careful, more specifically after calving on those younger females. Once they're done growing and they're reaching their mature body weight, such as when they're 4 or 5 years old, then it's a little easier to maintain them. It's not easy, but it's less difficult to maintain them on a good body condition score compared to those younger females. So body condition score, specifically after calving, focusing on reproduction, we have to pay a special attention to those younger females, first calf and second calf heifers, because not only they're eating to develop the pregnancy and also to maintain their body, they still have to grow. So the requirements are really higher or much higher than cows that are, on mature body weight already.
All right. Dr. Poehler, talking about checking for pregnancy loss and the technologies that are out there, does using rectal palpation or ultrasound cause stress to the cow to where it could result in pregnancy loss? Does it increase it if we go that route versus chemical?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, thinking about whether sort of rectally palpating or ultrasounding the animal actually drives some of that pregnancy loss. And if you look at all the studies out there, the pregnancy loss that have been associated with that are within the normal range of what the pregnancy loss we expect in beef cows. And so, it doesn't seem that if done correctly, and should emphasize that done correctly, that there's any issue. So, it is important to obviously minimize the stress of those animals when working them. And there's a lot of good data out there as far as the stress associated with hauling animals, those type of things, increasing pregnancy loss. But worked in the right situation and by an experienced individual, rectal palpation and ultrasound aren't going to drive pregnancy loss.
All right. Dr. Cook, for producers out there that are interested in the EFA study, what types of product can be fed to cows to help boost EFAs in their diet to help them throughout, just help those calves throughout gestation?
That's a good point. Of course, we have several natural options of ingredients that provide a good source of omega-3 and omega-6. However, on those natural ingredients, like oilseeds, for instance, the fat on those sources are not protected in terms of the rumen environment. And if omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids reach the rumen on a unprotected source, they're going to be modified by the rumen bugs. They're going to be saturated by the rumen bugs. They're going to become just saturated regular fatty acids without the essential properties that they have. So when we talk about essential fatty acids, it's important to consider sources that are ruminally protected. Okay, and there's several companies that are producing those specific supplements based on essential fatty acids, and they provide those supplements as a form of calcium salts of fatty acids, for instance. What they do is they bind the fatty acid to a calcium molecule, and that makes the fatty acids inert in the rumen, so they bypass the rumen without being modified by the rumen bugs. They reach the intestine, and then they're really delivered to the cow on its original form. So several sources out there, commercial sources, and the source of protection that I recommend is the calcium salt of fatty acid.
All right. Dr. Poehler, if I'm a producer that's only going to preg check my cows once a year, like most producers that we have out there, when would be the best time for me to do that? How many days after conception would we hope, or when we pull the bulls out?
Yeah, I think if you look back at that sort of initial graph that I showed in regards to those periods of pregnancy loss, I think when we think about doing a single pregnancy diagnosis in a herd, one, we want to at least make sure that our bulls have been out 28 days or 30 days if you're going to use ultrasound or blood-based testing, and maybe a little longer if you're going to use rectal palpation. But then just make sure that a majority of the cows that you're trying to identify whether they're indeed pregnant or not are going to be around that sort of 50, 45-day window at least, so that you can get past the majority of that pregnancy loss, so that you're not kicking those cows, let's say, out to grass or out to range open, or getting ready to experience pregnancy loss and sort of have them out there all year and then end up with no calf. So that's kind of how I would think about it, is sort of minimizing your risk based on those periods of pregnancy loss.
All right. Dr. Cook, to touch back on your EFA question in the study, are there any forages or byproducts out there that producers could utilize in their herd to help boost that in cows during gestation?
Yeah, like I said before, there are forages. Usually the fat content of forages are fairly low to really provide the amount that they need to make a change. And in that case, we provided about 200 grams or maybe half a pound of the fatty acid itself to the cows. So it's really hard to reach that level with forages because they usually have a low fat content. And there are byproducts, that may provide a good source of omega-6 and omega-3, for instance. However, like I said, most of those byproducts are going to be providing, and the forages are going to be providing, those fatty acids on an unprotected source. Even though the cows are eating it, those essential fatty acids are not leaving the rumen as they were supposed to be, because they're being biohydrogenated or modified by the rumen bugs into normal saturated fatty acids.
Gotcha. So it looks like we can't get those EFAs absorbed past the rumen because our rumen bugs are converting them. Understand?
Exactly.
All right. Well, it looks like we've ran out of questions for tonight and out of time as well. If you are listening to this recording and you have questions, we can definitely get in contact with the Repro Task Force team. Just email producered@beef.org, and we can help get you in touch with the Repro Task Force team to answer any other questions. Gentlemen, I would like to thank you tonight for joining us. I'd also like to thank the Repro Task Force team for helping us put together this series. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.